religious researchers, Darren Slade here. One of the most frequent questions we get at GCRR is, what exactly is religion? Surprisingly, the answer is a bit, complicated. It's not as easy as you might think. It's kind of like trying to define a chair. When you're first asked to do so, you'd think it's an easy enough term, and we all know what a chair is, right? That is, until you're presented with actual examples from the real world that seem to defy every definition you give. For instance, defining a chair as something you sit on would seem to suggest that a wall classifies as a chair as well, but that's not right. A wall is not a chair. Or you could define a chair as something you sit on with 4 legs. But that's not accurate either. There are some chairs with only 3 legs and some with no legs at all. A beanbag, for example. Is a chair only a seat meant for one person with a back to it? So then do love seats not count as a chair? Or bar stools? If you were in a bar surrounded by nothing but bar stools and someone said, "Hey, pull up a chair," would you grab one of the bar stools or just look around perplexed? Well, you'd probably grab one of the bar stools, right? The very fact that you would know what they were talking about indicates that language is both fluid and relative to each individual conversation. Terms can and do change meaning depending on context and depending on who's speaking. Well, the same problem occurs for the term religion. And so that's what we're going to explore in this episode from the Global Center for Religious Research. Despite what you might have seen on popular memes, the term religion cannot be boiled down to something as trite and uninformed as what appears in the dictionary. The belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. This definition precludes a number of major systems that we traditionally call religion, such as Buddhism or the Jedi religion. Sometimes the dictionary presents more vague categories, such as a particular system of faith and worship, or a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. These won't really work either. Again, not all religions have a system of faith and worship, and ascribing supreme importance to something doesn't therefore make it a religion. As somebody may be intensely passionate or obsessed with collecting stamps, but that doesn't suddenly mutate a hobby or a profession into an actual religion. And what about the different expressions of religious belief? Is there only one Christian religion? Or are each of the more than 40,000 denominations a religion in and of themselves, as suggested by the Center for the Study of Global Christianity? So then what is religion? Well, it's interesting to note that what we think of as religion here in the West really didn't come about until the 16th century, when colonialists started imposing the term on other indigenous peoples and native cultures. Indeed, as we've come to realize, most non-Western cultures do not distinguish or define religion the way we do here in the West. Now, Jonathan Smith gives a wonderful breakdown of the history, complexity, and supposed ubiquity of the term. Both in the Roman Empire and in early Christianity, the term religion simply referred to the repetition of prescribed cultic obligations. Hence, to this day, we say things like, "I brush my teeth religiously." During the monastic period of church history, religion was used to describe the intensely pious life of a monk. Later, 16th and 17th century European explorers would look at the different kinds of clergy and houses of worship in, say, Islam, and then refer to these institutions as religion. But it was not necessarily the general public that practiced religion. Rather, just like the monks before them, the term religion predominantly applied to people like imams or muftis, the Muslim counterparts to Catholic priests and monks. Gradually, religion became a generic, primitive anthropological category for anything involving some kind of ritual or ritualistic object, which was simply a method for colonialists to argue that a particular tribe had an idolatrous or perverted form of true religion. By the 18th century, religion had a uniquely Catholic and Protestant theological connotation, where it was seen solely as reverence, service, and adoration of the Christian God. Because of things like the Protestant Reformation, the term no longer identified ritualistic practices as religion. Instead, it focused on a person's piety, whether they possessed the right mindset and worship of the right kind of God. Religion was now focused on belief as opposed to practice. This is why some early anthropological work would classify only 4 types of religion based on their association to the Abrahamic faiths. There were, of course, Christians and Jews and then Muslims. And then there were idolaters, those who don't worship the Abrahamic God. But this, of course, led to further complications. Are certain Christian groups that were deemed heretical still part of Christianity? Or are they now practicing idolatry and thus classified under a different kind of religion? With this differentiation, which was actually prevalent even as far back as the 4th century Christian apologists, came an intentional us versus them, in-group, out-group dichotomizing of people groups. We practice the right religion while everyone else practices a false religion. We are right with God. They are merely heathens, pagans, and superstitious idolaters. Soon, as rationality and the Enlightenment came into prominence, notions of natural religion dominated the academic and philosophical worlds, where religion was synonymous with people's innate ability to view the world and instinctually or rationally deduce a system of beliefs. This process made religion less supernatural in origin and more historical, as seen most prominently in David Hume's 18th century work, The Natural History of Religion, where he essentially argued that humanity does not innately gravitate toward a belief in invisible beings. Thus, for Hume, religion is not a universal characteristic of all cultures. Only by the happenstances of history and accidents of personal experience do people eventually develop these kinds of intricate belief systems. Now, fast forward to the present day, and we have more or less social scientific ways of describing religion. For instance, Ninian Smart suggests that religion is nothing more than a worldview, which is simply a system of belief which, through symbols and actions, mobilize the feelings and wills of human beings. Anthropologist Melford Spiro defines religion as an institution consisting of culturally patterned interaction with culturally postulated superhuman beings, thereby making cultural activities the essence of religiosity. Other anthropologists have either eliminated or toned down the reference to supernatural or superhuman beings as being inherent to religion. Other scholars simply dismiss defining religion as a hopeless and futile endeavor. Stuart Guthrie basically argues that scholars simply pick a number of character traits or ideas that they think belong together and then call it religion. Sociologist J. Milton Yinger accurately explained that any definition of religion is likely to be satisfactory only to its author. So what does that mean for defining religion? After all, there are more than 50 different, sometimes clashing definitions of religion by academics, philosophers, and religious specialists going back hundreds of years. Well, it's probably best simply to conclude, along with anthropologist Jack David Eller, that definitions are not real things. They are cultural inventions. Thus, any definition of religion needs to be evaluated according to how inclusive and productive it is, not whether the definition itself is true or false. So we need to realize that any definition you or someone else comes up with is never going to capture something as diverse as the world's many, many religions. Each definition will ultimately emphasize one aspect while minimizing or neglecting other aspects. No one or two or three definitions will fit all examples. So what do you think, researchers? Did that sufficiently muddy the waters for you? Let us know what you think and if you've come up with a pretty good definition of religion in your own research. Thanks for watching, and we want to give a special shout out to our Patreon supporters. If you want to support GCRR, you can find our Patreon link in the description section below. Your support goes toward funding scientific research on religion around the world. And be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you can get the latest updates on the different publications, academic conferences, and services provided by the Global Center for Religious Research. Take care, everyone.